At 72, Walter Hayes believed his life had already said everything it was going to say. He lived in a quiet town in Ohio, in a small blue house that creaked with memories. His wife Eleanor had passed away 8 years earlier, and since then the house felt less like a home and more like a museum of a life that no longer existed. Every morning, Walter followed the same routine: black coffee, toast, and the local newspaper folded neatly on the kitchen table. He spoke to no one, not because he was rude, but because grief had slowly taught him silence. Across town lived Margaret Lewis, 70, a retired school librarian with kind eyes and a careful smile. Her husband, Frank, had been gone for nearly a decade. She filled her days with volunteering at the community center, knitting scarves she donated every winter, and rereading old novels that reminded her of who she used to be. Margaret told herself she was content, but late at night, when the house grew quiet, loneliness sat beside her like an unwelcome guest she had learned to tolerate. Fate stepped in quietly one autumn afternoon at the local community center. Walter had come reluctantly after his daughter insisted he get out of the house. Margaret was organizing donated books when Walter wandered in, unsure why he was there. He picked up a worn copy of To Kill a Mockingbird, the same book Eleanor used to love. Margaret noticed him standing there, lost in thought, and gently said, "That one's been loved a lot." Walter looked up, surprised by the warmth in her voice, and replied, "Some books deserve it." That simple exchange planted a seed neither of them expected. They began seeing each other every Wednesday afternoon, first by accident, then by choice. Coffee turned into conversations. Conversations turned into laughter. Walter found himself telling stories he hadn't shared in years, and Margaret listened the way only someone who truly understands loss can listen. For the first time since Eleanor's death, Walter felt something stir inside him. Not betrayal, not guilt, but a quiet comfort he had forgotten was possible. Still, fear lingered. Walter worried about what people would say. He worried about his children thinking he was replacing their mother. Margaret feared disappointment more than judgment. She had rebuilt her life carefully, brick by brick, and opening her heart again felt like inviting another storm. They both pretended they were just friends, even as their bond deepened. The challenge came during a winter charity dinner. Walter invited Margaret as his guest, and when he introduced her, his son's surprised expression cut deeper than expected. Later that night, his son pulled him aside and said, "Dad, I didn't think you'd want this again." Walter went home questioning everything. Margaret, sensing the shift, gave him space, believing perhaps she had misunderstood what they were becoming. Weeks passed without a word. The silence hurt more than loneliness ever had. One evening, Walter sat alone, staring at Eleanor's old photograph. For the first time, instead of tears, he felt clarity. Eleanor had loved deeply and lived fully. She would never have wanted him to stop living. With trembling hands, he picked up the phone and called Margaret. They met at the same community center where they first spoke. Walter, voice shaking, told her the truth, that he was scared, that he didn't want to hurt anyone, but that he had never felt more alive than when she was around. Margaret listened, tears quietly falling, and then she said something that changed everything. "Love doesn't erase the past. It honors it by proving the heart can survive." From that moment they stopped hiding. They walked together in the park, hands brushing, then holding. Walter introduced Margaret properly to his family, not as a replacement but as a new chapter. Slowly, his children saw the light return to their father's eyes. Margaret's friends noticed her laughter sounded younger, freer. Their love wasn't loud or dramatic. It was patient. It was made of shared grocery lists, doctor appointments, and quiet evenings watching old movies. But it was real and it was strong. They reminded each other that life doesn't stop asking us to be brave just because we grow older. One spring afternoon, Walter proposed, not with diamonds or grand gestures, but with a handwritten letter and a simple question. "Would you like to spend the rest of our days choosing each other?" Margaret said yes, her answer wrapped in tears and laughter. Their wedding was small, held in the community center where it all began. As Walter and Margaret stood together, surrounded by family, friends, and stories yet to be lived, they proved something powerful: that love has no age limit, no deadline, and no rules written in stone.